What do you do? Seriously, Charlie Kirk, give us some advice.
Get better ideas, Governor.
As Governor Gavin Newsom's podcast with Charlie Kirk makes national news, Kirk gives us his first interview about it.
This is a guy that wants to be president more than any other human being, I think, currently alive.
Hold on.
Then we're with the new U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner, as he tours California's fire zones.
Palisades and Altadena, what can we do for you?
We join his tour in South L.A., checking out a new model for combating California's homelessness crisis.
There has to be a paradigm shift. It's not the money, it's the stewardship.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
Welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson reporting this week from the campus of Cal State Northridge. All of the students here are here to either oppose or support that guy right there, Charlie Kirk.
Kirk is traveling the country, speaking to college campuses, challenging students to prove him wrong.
So do you think that Donald Trump really should be the face of the Christian religion?
No, Jesus should be the face of the Christian religion.
The appearances often draw a mix of protesters and plenty of supporters.
Look how popular Trump is on your campus. How does that make you feel?
Kirk created Turning Point USA.
Nobody produces results like Turning Point USA.
They host events recruiting young people to the conservative cause.
I want to express my tremendous gratitude to Charlie Kirk.
An AP poll shows that Trump won 18 to 29-year-olds for the first time ever in 2024.
You are making a damn dent.
Thank you.
Governor Gavin Newsom noticed and invited Kirk to be his first guest on his new podcast, This is Gavin Newsom. A discussion over transgender athletes makes headlines.
Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that.
Kirk speaks to us on the CSUN campus.
Congratulations on the podcast with Gavin Newsom. Incredible response. Everybody seems to be talking about this thing. What's your big takeaway from it?
Well, yeah, first, appreciated the conversation and to be invited there. Look, it was really interesting. It was obvious that the governor wants to move to the middle on a lot of the political issues that the Democrat Party has been on the unpopular side of. The one that's making the most headlines, obviously, is biological men in women's sports. And he said he totally agrees with me, and that's a direct quote.
Were you surprised by that?
I was a little taken aback. I anticipated a little bit more of a politician answer. You could kind of see that laced in, but then he just bluntly said, look, I agree with you. It's about fairness. He's already receiving a lot of backlash by local leaders here in California for that position. And we'll see if he actually follows up that rhetoric with action, like an executive order or trying to champion the state bill that will prohibit biological men in women's sports. But the reaction so far has been quite promising.
Well, let's talk about that backlash. Scott Wiener, who's a state senator from California, called you a vile bigot. He said what Newsom said was profoundly disturbing. He says it creates a fake moral panic. California Legislative LGBTQ caucus says it was profoundly sickened and frustrated by what the governor said. How do you respond to that?
I've gone back and forth with Mr. Wiener on Twitter or X quite often. Look, I don't have to respond or justify his attacks towards me. I will say, though, that 80% of Americans want to see youth sports in general, but all sports where biological men are not competing in women's spaces or in women's sports. But look, he can name call all he wants. But I think his problem is actually with his governor, and I'm kind of see how they reconcile this, right? I mean, look, he can go back and forth with me. I'm not the governor of this state. Yeah. His own governor has actually decided to moderate on the position, at least in rhetoric. We'll see if it comes in action. And I think it's very interesting that at this moment where the Democrats are kind of in the wilderness, they're looking for their own political leader, seems as if Governor Newsom wants to try to position him as the moderate. I think he's been a total failure as governor. We could talk about that if you'd like. But at the very least, from a rhetorical standpoint, he's starting to say things that would make the Democrat Party more palatable to the rest of the country.
What's the backstory on this podcast? How did you get involved in this?
I got a phone call from Governor Newsom 2 weeks ago.
Himself, he called you himself.
That's right, yeah. Connected through Kimberly Guilfoyle. Obviously, they have a shared past, yeah.
That's who connected you two?
Well,
Kimberly Guilfoyle?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
So,
his ex-wife, of course.
Yeah, so shared past, and I know KG, as we call her, who's now going to be the ambassador to Greece through Trump World. And I talked to the governor. He said, hey, I'm doing this podcast. I want to have you on. Would you like to come on? I said, yeah, I'll talk to anybody anytime. It's kind of my whole shtick. I'll do this on a college campus. So we went out to his podcast studio and we said, hey, let's talk about anything, keep it civil, which I think we did a good job of that. And then I tried to press and challenge him on some of the core failures that I would say that he is responsible for here in California, such as homelessness and crime and poverty rate and wealth inequality. and he obviously has some tailored responses to that. But yeah, that's the backstory.
Did he change your view of him at all?
I mean, my view of him is actually the same, which is this is a guy that wants to be president more than any other human being, I think, currently alive. And I think he's willing to do what...
Of course he says not, but
well, yeah,
most people don't believe that.
I mean, not every governor in the country has a podcast and inviting, MAGA faithful. Again, I'm not a mind reader. I can only kind of see where he's going. And it looks as if he's trying to be on the popular edge or the popular side of the issues right now. I don't know the man personally. I do think he's done destructive things to this beautiful state, a state that I love, and he's going to have to explain that, and the voters overwhelmingly across the country think negatively of it. But I will say this, credit to him. The positive thing I will say, credit to him for being willing to have a conversation, be willing to have dialogue. I wish more people on the left would be willing to do so.
What do you think of him as a presidential candidate? Do you think he's the strongest Democrat?
I mean, I don't even know what the field would look like. I would say this, though, that he at least has some self-awareness. He didn't say this to me, but I think he at least has some self-awareness that the rest of the country thinks so negatively about the California experiment. If you were to go into Pennsylvania and say that I'm a governor of California, you're dealing from like a 20-point disadvantage. People think of the state very negatively. I think that perception is reality. He does not. And so if he were to run for the presidency in 2028, he's going to have to try to rebrand himself, and I think this podcast is his attempt to do that.
What do you think is his biggest failure here?
Oh, well, I would go to price of housing, right? Second highest in the country, $850,000 on average. Highest is Hawaii, California is number 2. Wealth inequality is the least equal when it comes to wealth and income inequality in the country. Homelessness, obviously, 1 in 3 of all homeless in the country live in the state of California, leading the country in homelessness. And then also cost of living, the highest cost of living of any in the country.
Yeah, which he admitted was a huge
problem. And then I, tried to respectfully and forcefully rebuke, like, hey, you guys control everything, you being the Democrats, right? Supermajority in the House, supermajority in the Senate, Secretary of State, Attorney General, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. You can't blame MAGA Republicans for this. At some point, there has to be a reckoning with your ideas. Also, outward migration, he has, a slippery response to that. The facts are the facts. Yeah. California is decreasing in population for the first time in nearly 40 years.
Although the population went up last year after years of it declining, but we don't even get into that.
That is true, and you have to wonder how much of that is immigration from another country versus other states.
So let's talk about why we're here. So we're here on CSUN campus. You were just at USC earlier this week. You're going all around. Talk about the moment when you first walk up and the crowd sees you. What goes through your mind?
Well,
what that's like?
It depends
for you.
What campus. It's humbling. It's overwhelming to kind of see so many students willing to express conservative opinions and beliefs. But we've really helped build a movement of young people across the country that are patriotic, that love the nation, that believe in freedom and liberty, and want to keep fighting for their country.
We have seen an incredible growth, thanks in part to some of your work, in terms of young people voting for Trump, especially young men voting for Trump. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I did my best to explain this on the podcast.
Right, and talked about it a lot there.
With Governor Newsom. A couple things that you could look at. The immigration issue is really motivating a lot of people to ask the question, does our government work for us or does it work for those of foreign countries that come to our nation? Number 2, the trans issue is really kind of an affront to our senses, especially when it comes to sports and locker room access. Then finally, the biggest one is quality of life. That under the 4 years of Democrats, that thankfully that has now just changed, there was this kind of feeling that we were losing the American dream, that you can't buy a home, you got to rent for the rest of your life, that there's nothing we can do about the porous open border, that even though crime is happening in your community or break-ins or burglaries, that you just have to kind of get used to it. The Republican response, the America First response, is we can get back the country that you once grew up in.
Another big issue is in terms of cost of living, is tariffs. Do you think tariffs are going to reduce the cost of living?
I mean, it could, if it makes investment come back to the country. Look, we're not sure how this whole story is going to play out. I will say the reciprocal tariff policy the president is putting forward, I support completely. That if another country is tariffing us, that we should at least try to counterbalance that. The American people overwhelmingly voted in favor of tariffs. I think the president is going to go about this with great prudence and great judgment. If it starts raising prices, then I think he'll claw it back a little bit. However, the goal is to try to incentivize more domestic manufacturing and production and investment.
And we'll wrap things up doing something called personal issues, which is quick, fun,
rapid
cultural
fire
stuff
to
get to know you a little bit better, okay? So, Charlie Kirk, what is your favorite TV show right now?
Seinfeld. But it's not right now. I mean, it's
that's
kind
okay. All time. That's good. It's on in reruns,
there we go.
Including on one of our stations. So we'll
not that
take
there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah, there you go. Favorite movie?
All-time movie?
Yeah.
I'd have to say Godfather.
Great choice. Favorite athlete of all time?
Oh, Michael Jordan.
All right.
Grew up in Chicago.
There you go. Favorite book?
Other than the Bible, I'd have to say Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl.
What's your favorite way to relax?
I like saunas.
Okay.
I'm a big SoLa fan.
And Charlie Kirk, who was your role model?
My role model growing up would probably be my father, would probably be the people in my community, and then political role model. There's so many people to choose from, but I'd say Foster Freeze, who passed away in recent years.
And he helped to fund a lot of what you did.
Yeah, that's exactly one of our
right?
first donors, one of our first. Yeah.
What did he teach you?
He really told me the importance of the golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated. And he was the most generous individual, obviously being a donor to us. He had an amazing thing when, his 70th birthday, he brought 70 of his friends, came in, he said, "Hey, welcome to my 70th birthday. I'm giving you all $1 million to give to the charity of your choice." That was his birthday. He threw his own birthday,
awesome.
giving $70 million away to each million person. So it's just amazing, over-the-top generosity. Great lesson.
And I know Trump is a role model for you too. I know
Without
you
a
talk
doubt,
to
yes.
him a couple times a week. What's the biggest thing he's taught you?
Never give up. No matter if the world is against you and you feel as if everything's crashing along, alongside, never give up, believe in yourself, and amazing things can happen.
Charlie Kirk, thank
you
so much
so
for
much.
talking with us.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Up next, an exclusive sit-down with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner. We talk housing, homelessness, fire recovery, football, and God.
Hold on.
Secretary Scott Turner tours fire damage in Altadena with LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger.
Palisades and Altadena, what can we do for you?
He's extending the eviction moratorium for an additional 90 days.
This will give families flexibility to rebuild and to have time to strategize. So help me God.
Turner is the 19th Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
We have a homelessness crisis in our country.
He's the first to have played in the NFL. He played 9 seasons, starting his career with the Washington Redskins. He grew up in Texas and played college ball at Illinois.
The other thing is having that I accepted Jesus.
After his football career, Turner became a pastor.
You're going to say grace, and then we'll have our meeting, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's pray.
Here's Turner delivering a prayer at the first Trump cabinet meeting of the president's second term. During Trump's first term, Turner worked for then HUD Secretary Ben Carson.
Hello, my name is Scott Turner.
Back then, he helped to create the White House Opportunity Zone program.
When you look around here, what goes through your mind?
Excellence.
We joined him as he visited an Opportunity Zone in South LA at the SoLa Modular Housing Factory, where they're building high-quality, affordable housing units in real time.
Secretary Turner, welcome to The Issue Is for the first time. Welcome to Southern California. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So we are in what's called an Opportunity Zone, which you helped to create that concept. For people that don't understand what that is, what is an Opportunity Zone?
Well, thank you for having me. So Opportunity Zones came about as a result of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is the big tax overhaul legislation that President Trump signed into law in his first term. Senator Tim Scott, who was the lead senator and legislator on Opportunity Zones, and the president, they were asking the question, what can be done for these communities in America where the forgotten people are living, where investment hasn't been made in decades. And we all are familiar with those types of neighborhoods, be it rural, tribal, and urban. And so Opportunity Zones were created. Every governor, every tribal leader, and every territory leader was tasked with nominating 25% of eligible census tracts. And the Department of Treasury certified them for 10 years, and there's 8,764 Opportunity Zones, so neighborhoods. The spirit of the law is economic development and community development. And so there's a capital gains incentive from a tax perspective that brought in private capital. So people who had realized the capital gain from the sale of an asset, if you will, a stock or property, could then invest in a qualified Opportunity Zone fund and use it as a vehicle to build new housing, to build new operating businesses. And these are some of the most distressed, under-resourced communities in America. And so as a result, $84 billion have been invested of private capital in the Opportunity Zones. 1 million people got lifted off of poverty, housing values went up, salaries went up, and so Opportunity Zones have been very impactful.
So you helped to create this in the first administration, now you're helping to run the whole thing as the secretary. Here we are at SoLa. You just got a tour around an impressive spot here. What was the big takeaway from checking out how they build housing here that you think could be applied more broadly to the rest of the country?
So yes, you're right. We're here at SoLa Impac, which was one of the first campuses, a business campus in an Opportunity Zone. Martin Maudo, who is my great friend. He was the founder and the CEO of SoLa. And now we're at Model Z, which is a manufacturing facility where they create affordable housing units to be used for people across LA County, hopefully across the nation. They're affordable houses, one-bedroom units that are very clean, they're modern, and they're all built right here in this factory, which is in the Opportunity Zone.
You know, here in California, one of our biggest issues is homelessness.
Yes.
The problem has continued to get worse. What's going to be the biggest difference now in the Trump administration for people when it comes to homelessness? Is there going to be a big change on the federal level to try to help this state?
Well, you know, homelessness is a crisis in our country, but in particular here in California. Homelessness in California has gone up 44%, I believe, over the last 5 years, and with record funding. And so there has to be better management. There has to be better, not just care, but public-private partnerships, working with faith-based organizations, recognizing that there's people in the private sector and people in faith-based organizations that are doing this on a daily basis and have tremendous results.
But is there a specific policy change that's coming?
So homelessness, when you look at this, when I talked about engaging the nonprofits around our country as it pertains to homelessness have been doing a tremendous job. And because of that, we have to do a better job of bringing them in.
You talk about nonprofits. You visited one of my personal favorites, which is the Dream Center in Hollywood. They have people come in there. They live there, many of them suffering from substance abuse. They get them cleaned up. They get them trained for jobs. And there's a faith-based component of that. I know you prayed with them on the campus. What was your takeaway from the Dream Center?
I was blown away by the leadership there. Mr. Barnett.
Pastor Matthew Barnett.
He and his father 30 years ago had a dream to serve the people of LA. And here we are 30 years later, and they serve 700 people a day that just live there. They feed people, they disciple people, they pray for people, they take people in. We heard two powerful testimonies yesterday, one from a young lady and one from a young man who had both been from totally different backgrounds, but had struggles. And the Dream Center took them in, and now they're on their way to graduating here in a few weeks from the program, and on their way to living a life of self-sustainability and thriving, and have a relationship with Christ and have a community of people. And so the Dream Center, I wish everybody could see the Dream Center and what they're doing and how they serve one person at a time, so that they can not only get out of the Dream Center, but really thrive as individuals.
You're a pastor, a great preacher yourself. Talk about how your faith informs the way you look at this job.
Well, you know, HUD is a very unique place because we have housing. Housing touches every family in America. And so my faith in Christ, and not only does it inform me, but it encourages me, it challenges me, it drives me to lay my life down for others. You know, the Bible says that Jesus didn't come to be served, but he came to serve. And that's what HUD is. We're servant leaders to the people of America.
This is the epicenter of homelessness.
During the Biden administration, then HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge worked with Democratic local officials in California to expand federal housing vouchers. Secretary Turner says the approach has largely failed. Says the state needs to do a better job of using its own resources.
I know in the previous administration there was a lot of a push for vouchers for people here. Do we need more vouchers? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm a stewardship person. We had a great meeting today with some of the leadership here at LA and LA County. I think we need to take inventory. One thing that I do emphasize, we have to maximize the budget that we do have. And make sure that from a voucher standpoint, from a resource standpoint, that we're using these to serve the people that we've been called to serve in the best way, most efficient from a stewardship standpoint. And so all of those things are being looked at.
When we come back, Secretary Turner plays personal issues. We see a different side of him. We continue our conversation at SoLa Impac in South LA with the U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner.
This is our opportunity to get to know you a little bit. You've got an amazing life story.
Thank you.
Spending time in the NFL, played for the Redskins, the Chargers, the Broncos. But the way you started your life is something you preach about a lot, and the value of hard work, and your father taught you about that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, you know, hard work, I think it's dignified. You know, and my father and my mother, albeit that their relationship, their marriage was broken, two things that I took from my parents. My father taught me how to work very hard, and my mother taught me how to relationship with Christ and to trust in him. And so I always encourage people, no matter what your circumstance is, right, work hard. No matter what where you come from, you know, where are you trying to go? Stay focused on that mission, and hard work and resilience, and never give up. You know, I was always told I wouldn't play in the NFL. You're not big enough. You didn't play enough. You know, in college, you didn't have enough experience. There's always going to be a reason why you cannot do something, an excuse why you cannot do it. But I've always found that if you put your hand to the plow and stay focused, trust the Lord, and work hard, you could do it.
And our last question is something we do called personal issues. It's 30 seconds, rapid fire cultural favorites to get to know you.
All right.
First thing that comes to mind, sort of one word answers. All right, ready?
Yes.
What's your favorite TV show?
You know, I don't watch a lot of TV. I would say Sanford and Son used to be one of my favorites.
Favorite movie of all time?
Passion.
All right. Favorite book?
The Bible.
Good answer. Favorite sports team?
Redskins.
Okay. Who is your role model?
Well, from a faith standpoint, it was Christ. But I've had tremendous role models in my life, from Aeneas Williams to Darrell Green to Tim Johnson. And these men the Lord brought around me, Troy Vincent, at different seasons of my life to teach me and encourage me. And I hope to be that too, you know, for the next generation of leaders.
Secretary Turner, thank you so much for taking time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll wrap things up for the week right after this. Listen to our full conversation with Charlie Kirk.
Trying to set the bar.
And with HUD Secretary Turner in podcast form. Just search for The Issue Is wherever you stream.
Our thanks to you for watching The Issue Is. I'm Elex Michaelson reporting from South LA. See you next week for more.